Hi, my name is Cora Beth, and in this very short video, I want to talk you through how to write a good research question. First of all, it's worth asking, what is a good research question? Well, a good research question is very practical. It's one that you can answer in the time and space you have available. It doesn't matter how interesting your question is. If you don't have time to do the work for it, it's not a good research question. People often have unrealistic expectations of what they can manage. Your research question does not need to be groundbreaking. It doesn't have to be based on brand new research that you have done or that somebody else has done. It doesn't have to be publishable. It doesn't have to look like a journal article. And it certainly doesn't need to be something that's never been done before. People often get in touch with me and say, but what if somebody has done this before? What if they've answered this question? Well, that's okay. Those people aren't you. They're not going to have exactly your approach or choose exactly your selection of material. So your work doesn't have to be blindingly original to be really good work. Your research question does need to be realistic. It needs to be something that you can do. It needs to be achievable at a suitable depth. So not such a broad question that you can only answer it in general terms. Something where you can look at some good examples. It also needs to be a demonstration of your skills. If the whole course that you've been studying is about critical reading, then show that you can do critical reading. It also has to be answerable at your current level with the material that you have access to. If you give yourself a very, very ambitious question that involves a whole load of brand new research and a new topic for you, then that's giving yourself something that can't really be done in the time limit. So be realistic about what you can do. So what does an achievable research question look like? Well, here are some examples of things that are not achievable and how to make them achievable. So the first question I've made up here, these are all about Medea. To what extent was Medea really a feminist? This is not achievable for a number of reasons. But the main one is that anything with the word really in it, or getting to the truth of something, or finding out the facts, isn't really achievable. It isn't practical because it's too ambitious, and in this case, when it applies to myth, there's no such thing as really. So you need to make it more achievable. So you can do something like, in what ways do Greek and Roman writers present Medea as a powerful woman? This is achievable because in writing your answer, you could pick 2 or 3 writers and look at how they show different facets of Medea's character, depending on whether they want to present her as dangerous or vulnerable. You can look specifically at the ways that Medea is presented as powerful. This is a much more achievable question. Here's another hypothetical example. If you were to ask, how evil is Medea's witchcraft? This is not achievable. It's a very broad question. It doesn't specify what sort of material you'd be using, and it involves some sort of an abstract moral judgment about what is evil and what isn't. This is a very, very messy question. But you could make it much more specific. You could say something like, what techniques have visual artists used to associate Medea's witchcraft with evil? This is much more achievable because you could pick several paintings from different cultures and look at how they've used symbolic elements to connect Medea with their perception of evil. So that makes it much more specific, much more achievable in the word limit. Here's another example of an unachievable question and a more achievable version. Jason is the real villain of the Medea myth. Discuss. This is more of a debate topic than an academic question. Again, we're back to this idea of what's real, and we're looking at the myth in general rather than specific versions. This is a very big question. You could write a book on this and still not get to a sensible answer. But you could make it much more specific by saying something like, how has the character of Jason changed over time to reflect changing social prejudices? Perhaps against foreigners or against people of a different background. It's still a big question. You would probably have to narrow it down still, but it puts the focus firmly on the context of different representations and ways in which Jason changes as the focus of prejudice changes. You could do a lot with this question, but you'd be looking quite specifically at how the character of Jason is tied in to the social and historical context of the different versions. And that's very much the sort of thing that you want to be doing with a research question. So the main point I want to make is that you need to write something that you can answer. Something that you specifically can answer, that you'll be interested in answering, but mainly that you are able to answer in the time and space you have available. If you're not sure if your question is easily answerable, just spend half an hour making a bullet point plan of a possible answer. If a clear argument emerges and a firm conclusion that answers the question, then it sounds like it's a good question. Do bear in mind that it takes a while to create a good question. Allow some time for doing this because it's not an instant thing. Often you think that if you have a good topic, then the perfect question will emerge almost without even trying. That's not usually how it works. The exact wording of the question will dictate how you answer it. So you have to be careful and you have to take time. Don't rush it. And be open to changing your question if your focus shifts. You might get partway through the essay and find that actually you're saying something slightly different, and then you can change your question accordingly. And the final point worth noting is always check when you get to the end of your essay to make sure your question and your essay match up. Have you answered the question bang on, or have you answered a slightly different question? In which case, it's usually quicker to alter your research question than it is to alter the whole essay. So make sure the two things match at the end, because you will be marked on how well you have answered your own question. So make sure that's what you've done.